19 million walk-behind mowers, 4 million riding tractors, 65 million bicycles. Murray was America's most trusted name in affordable outdoor equipment. And then it died over a single $40 million unpaid debt. But the real question isn't what killed Murray. It's how 3 successive owners hollowed out a company so completely that $40 million was enough to end it. In 1919, on Cleveland's East Side, a group of industrialists pooled their capital to launch a modest metalworking shop. They called it Murray, Ohio Manufacturing Company. The first products were simple: fuel tanks, fenders, and stamped steel parts for Detroit's booming auto industry. The work was hard. The hours were long. But the promise was clear: reliable machines built by skilled hands for a country on the move. By 1923, the clang of steel presses began to shape something new: pedal cars. Murray's miniature trucks and steel coaster wagons rolled out of Cleveland catalogs and into American living rooms. For 2 decades, these toys became a staple in nurseries and backyards. Their bright paint and sturdy frames, a symbol of childhood freedom. The company's willingness to diversify, to spot opportunity in the rhythm of America's daily life, set it apart from hundreds of other metal shops fighting for survival in the post-war years. The mid-1930s brought the bicycle boom. Murray's Mercury bicycle, designed by Victor Schreckengost, debuted at the 1939 New York World's Fair. Chrome trim, streamlined graphics, and a futuristic silhouette made it a standout. Ads promised modernity and reliability. For families squeezed by Depression-era budgets, the Mercury offered a taste of style and independence at a price they could afford. The bike's success cemented Murray's reputation for accessible, well-made machines. World War II changed everything. The federal government ordered factories to pivot overnight. Murray's workers stopped building toys and bikes and turned instead to war production, manufacturing anti-aircraft gun magazines, bomb casings, and high-precision ammunition parts. The Cleveland plant ran around the clock, forging the skills and discipline that would later define Murray's post-war workforce. When the war ended, pent-up demand for leisure and utility products exploded. Murray's engineers put their wartime expertise to work, launching a new generation of pedal cars with ball-bearing wheels and ramping up production of steel bicycles and walk-behind mowers for America's growing suburbs. In 1956, the company made its boldest move yet. Rising labor costs and the need for modern facilities pushed Murray to relocate everything to Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. City officials approved a $2 million municipal bond to finance a sprawling new plant. The first bicycle rolled off the line that spring, under vaulted ceilings and the watchful eyes of 500 local hires. Over the next decade, the factory would swell to 2.5 million square feet, an industrial city within a city, humming with the sound of presses, welders, and conveyor belts. For one line worker, the memory of opening day is still vivid: the smell of oil and fresh paint, the steady thump of machines, the sense that this place would anchor a community for generations. By the end of that first year, the Lawrenceburg plant was running at full tilt, its future as the heart of Murray's empire seemingly assured. By the late 1960s, Murray's Lawrenceburg plant was no longer just a southern curiosity. It was a machine of American scale, 2.5 million square feet under one roof, with the hum of presses and welders echoing across the Tennessee Valley. In 1967, the first Murray walk-behind mower rolled off the line, just as the suburban population passed 70 million. The timing was perfect. Every new ranch house and split level brought another patch of grass, another customer. Murray's engineers, drawing on decades of metalworking know-how, designed machines that could survive years of weekend use and winter neglect. The company's reputation for solid, affordable machines spread quietly, almost invisibly, through America's backyards. Yet few Americans ever saw the Murray name. The company's white label contracts put its mowers and tractors under the banners of Craftsman at Sears, Stanley at Walmart, and Kmart's own store brand. In the 1970s and 1980s, Murray was building the machines everyone used, but almost no one knew it. The numbers tell the story. By 1999, Murray had produced 19 million walk-behind mowers, 4 million riding tractors, and 65 million bicycles. At its peak, the Lawrenceburg plant supported 1,400 hourly jobs, plus 200 in engineering, quality, and administration. Shifts ran day and night to meet the volume commitments demanded by retail giants. Sears alone accounted for nearly a third of all mower sales. Innovation kept the lines moving. In 1994, Murray introduced the first mass-market hydrostatic drive riding tractor, a machine that offered smooth, gearless operation at a price families could afford. The hydrostatic model, with its continuously variable transmission, quickly became a bestseller, proof that high-end features did not have to mean high prices. Production ledgers from the mid-1990s show annual output topping 2 million walk-behind mowers and 400,000 riding tractors. Bicycles too remained a staple, with the plant turning out over 4 million units a year at its height. For many, these machines became lifelong companions. One collector who still maintains a 1977 Murray tractor recalls us, "I've mowed with it every summer for more than 40 years. I've changed the oil, replaced a belt or two, but it just keeps running." That kind of durability was once the rule, not the exception. The engineering culture at Lawrenceburg prized reliability above flash, and the machines that left the factory bore the weight of that promise. By the end of the 1990s, Murray's reach was everywhere, on lawns, in garages, and in the memories of those who built and used their products. The company's invisible ubiquity and commitment to solid engineering had made it a quiet giant. But as the century turned, the ground beneath Murray was beginning to shift. The next chapter would test whether a brand built on trust and scale could withstand the pressures of a changing industry. In 1988, the British conglomerate Tompkins plc took control of Murray, bringing a new focus on cost reduction and global expansion. The first changes were subtle. Certain non-critical mower housings, once stamped in Tennessee, started arriving from Chinese subcontractors. The company's long-standing 6-stage functional testing was replaced with basic visual inspections for imported parts. What had once been a rigorous process, checking torque specs, verifying welds, and running machines under load, became a matter of glancing at shipments and trusting the paperwork. By 1993, after Murray acquired the Noma line, the push to cut costs intensified. Noma's supply chain playbook relied on overseas vendors, and Murray followed suit. Injection molded plastic decks, once produced in-house, were now sourced from Malaysia and Thailand. The quality control supervisor at the time remembers the change. "We used to test every batch, every shift. Suddenly, we were told to accept the vendor's own SPC data. If their numbers looked good on paper, that was enough." The internal inspection checkpoints shrank. Instead of hands-on verification, the plant leaned on spreadsheets and supplier promises. When a Chinese investment group took over in 2000, the process accelerated. The majority of stamping, molding, and even engine assembly moved to factories in Guangdong. Lawrenceburg's role was reduced to final assembly and repackaging. One of the last safeguards, torque spec verification on engine mount bolts, was quietly eliminated. The QC team shrank as the company relied almost entirely on vendor-supplied reports. Defects that would once have been caught on the line now slipped through to the customer. The technical backbone that had defined Murray's machines for decades was steadily hollowed out, leaving the company exposed just as the financial storm gathered on the horizon. Spring 2004 arrived with a $45 million hole in Murray's inventory. The company's entire business model hinged on short-term credit. Borrow heavily in January, fill warehouses with mowers and tractors, then pay back the banks when big box retailers settled their invoices in the spring. That year, late shipments from overseas suppliers left Murray unable to deliver on its contracts. The cash simply wasn't there. The primary lender called the note. Briggs & Stratton owed $40 million for engines already shipped, filed a claim as the largest secured creditor. Inside the Lawrenceburg plant, the tension was visible. The human resources manager remembers the moment the news broke. They said they had 1,200 hourly workers and 200 salaried staff, and people were asking if their paychecks would clear. Then recall notices from the Consumer Product Safety Commission landed like a final blow. One notice said that objects can be ejected from the mower unexpectedly and could hit nearby consumers, and it urged consumers to stop using the product immediately and to discard or destroy it. Another notice warned of fuel tank cracks that could cause fire or explosion. Each defect traced back to the cost-cutting that had hollowed out Murray's quality controls. In November 2004, Murray filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in federal court. The docket listed $85 million in assets, $130 million in liabilities, and a workforce now hanging by a thread. Briggs & Stratton's legal counsel said they converted their creditor claim into a bid, and the court awarded them the assets for $125 million. The auction transferred the Lawrenceburg plant, the Murray name, and remaining inventory to Briggs & Stratton. For the workforce, it was the end of an era. The machines fell silent, and Murray, once the quiet giant behind America's lawns, lost its independence forever. Today, Murray's old plant sits quiet, while its name survives only on discounted imports. More than 19 million mowers once shaped American yards. Now the label stands for none of that legacy. When trusted machines vanish, so does a piece of what held our communities together. Thanks for watching.